Welcome back everyone to my channel. Happy that you're here. In today's episode, we're going to continue off in Salesforce with understanding Salesforce's security model. And the very first step in defining a security model is the organizational-wide defaults. But another thing that we're going to do is also do a comparison on the impact of the overall security model of your Salesforce instance between profiles and organizational-wide defaults and how they work together. So let's begin. Today, what I want to talk about is setting up the security model for your organization when they sign up for Salesforce. And think of these as the very initial steps as a Salesforce admin in defining and doing anything really. At the very beginning, you need to define your security model for your organization before you can have them use Salesforce. And the very first step is for them to define their organizational wide defaults. Now, I'm going to pivot over to a brief diagram that describes Salesforce's security model. So as you can see, the very first step is defining the organizational wide defaults, which is defining record level access across all objects for your users. Then you have other security functions mentioned here, such as role hierarchy, sharing rules, and manual sharing. These are all sharing functions that open up access for your users across Salesforce. And that's how the security model works. You can never go ahead and further, well, I can't really say never. There are some exceptions to the rule that we'll get into in future videos. But the general rule is when you're defining your security access, you can never use sharing rules, manual sharing, or role hierarchy to further restrict access to a user. These functions, the nature of these functions are to expand and provide more access for those users. So what I want to do is I want to access our organizational wide defaults. So as an admin, when I access our setup menu, I want to type in sharing settings. And I want to access our sharing settings. So here is our organizational wide defaults. I want to go ahead and click edit. And I'll just briefly explain what this is. So you'll see 4 columns here. You'll have your list of standard and custom objects all here in the system. Then you'll have the default internal access, default external access, and grant access using hierarchies columns. Our default internal access is meant for all employees in the organization and what they should have access to, in terms of record access across all custom and standard objects. Your default external access is any of your external users. So these do require licenses in Salesforce as well. It's the same as your employees, your internal access. But your external access users, think of them as customers or partners to the organization who need to authenticate to perform a particular function and to have access to certain records in Salesforce. Not all records, but certain records. That's what this default access, external access is for. So think of a partner portal or a customer portal that was created on Experience Cloud. In order for you to access that portal, you have to authenticate in. And you'll see then after that, whatever you've designed or defined as requirements for your business in terms of areas or records that they should be able to access after they authenticate into the portal. Now, one other type of user that I should mention here that's not shown in our organizational-wide defaults are our guest users. So guest users don't need Salesforce licenses, but they will have access to, let's say, an Experience Cloud public page that you've created where it doesn't require authentication. They just visit the page, it's a public page, and they can view information around your business. But they don't have access to any records. It's really just for them to see, certain information about your business on a public page. And those would be your guest users. Then you have this grant access using hierarchies column. And this is meant for the role hierarchies function that we briefly saw at the beginning of this video. You'll notice that I can't edit these because rule is any standard objects offered out of the box for Salesforce, they do not allow you to disable the role hierarchy. It is enabled by default, and you cannot modify this. Now, if I scroll down, you'll notice that for our other objects, so some standard objects, depending on the type of or like app that you have installed. So in this one, you'll see that I'm in a donation account, so a nonprofit account, and you'll see I have recurring donations that was a part of that package, and that recurring donation object that is provided in that package allows me to modify the role hierarchy. So there are a few exceptions. Custom objects as well that you create, you will always be able to modify this option and determine whether you want to use the role hierarchy or not for that particular custom object. But that's a general overview of your organizational wide default settings or page. Now let's get into how it works. So in this next topic, we're going to talk about how organizational wide defaults compares to profiles, which is another big piece of your sharing settings that is not mentioned in this data security model. But the reason why is because profiles is a part or implied when you're setting up your organizational wide defaults, which I'll get into. So let's go back into our sharing settings. And you'll notice I'm going to highlight account and contract as our object example for today. And you'll notice it has the public read write access for record access for all of our users. So that means if I'm a user, my baseline access, if I go into the accounts, I'll be able to view all the accounts. Okay, so the read and write is implied that I'm able to not only view all accounts, but I can also edit all accounts and contracts, as you can say. But I'm going to really focus on accounts for today. And that is the baseline security. Now, if I go into a profile, so let me type in profiles, and I'm going to go into a custom sales profile that I created. The way the profile works, so the organizational wide default looked at record access. What a profile looks at is object access. So what I mean is, if I open up a profile here, you're going to see, if I edit this profile and I scroll down, you're going to see standard object permissions. So this is where I can go ahead and I can modify my access for any user that is assigned this profile, their object level access. So you'll see they have read, create, edit, delete, view all, and modify all. View all and modify all is really like a special permission where it comes with its own privileges. When you have view all and modify all, it oftentimes overwrites, or not oftentimes, it all the time overwrites the record level access that you would have. It's a special permission. I'm not going to get into it today. We'll talk about view all and modify all in a separate video. But for right now, let's just focus on read, edit, create, edit, and delete. So as you can see, for this custom sales profile, I have, for my accounts object, my access is read, create, edit, delete. So I have access to do all of that. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and I modify this and I say I want to set for any users that have this profile read access to the accounts object only, they're not allowed to create, edit, or delete. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and I'm going to hit save. And remember, let me duplicate this window. Okay, so we had our custom profile set up. Let me actually edit this because I want to do a side-by-side comparison between profiles and our organizational wide defaults. Okay, so this is our profile. Let's go back to our organizational wide default. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to sharing settings. Okay, let me click edit, and you'll see, so this is set to public read write, right? And our profile is set to read object access for accounts. And this is set to public read write record access to accounts. So what will happen if I have, as a sales user that has this profile, if I have object level access to only read the object through my profile, the accounts object through my profile, but my organizational wide default has set my record level access for all users to be able to read and write all account records, what should I expect? Let's go ahead and let's log in as that user. So let's go into that user. I'm going to log in as that sales user with that profile. And you'll see here, if I click all accounts, I have access to see all accounts. Okay. Now, when I open up the account, I do not have access to edit this account. Okay. And the reason why is because, like I said, on the profile, I only had set to the object that I could read. I have read access to the accounts object. I don't have write access to the accounts object. Okay. So when I go in and I want to go ahead and make an edit, I can't edit any of these accounts. Okay. Even this account that's assigned to me, I'm the account owner, I don't have access to edit. And it's because my object level access to my profile was set to read only. And when I go to another account that's not owned by me, same thing. Okay. If I want to go ahead and create an account, I can't create an account. Because again, my profile has set my accounts object access to read only. So you can say that your profile overwrites the record level access that was defined on your organizational wide default because it specifies the object access on the profile while the organizational wide default specifies the record level access. But if my object only gives me access to read any records on the object or have read access to the object, then how can I go ahead and still edit a record defined by the organizational wide default if I don't have access to edit on the object level? I only have access to read on the object level. So therefore, in order for me to access a record that's contained, my account record that's contained in the accounts object, right? I must also have on my profile object level access, edit access, or else I can't go ahead and have edit access to the record because on my object, it's set to read only, not edit. I hope that helps. So now what I want to do is I actually want to make a minor adjustment. Okay. What I want to do is I want to show you how it would look like if my organizational wide default was set to private for our record level access for accounts, but then we had opened up our access through our profile where we said we want to read, edit, create, and delete. Let's see what happens there. I'm back in as a Salesforce administrator, and I want to adjust our organizational wide defaults for our accounts to be set to private. So I'm going to click edit. I'm going to go to our account and contract object, and I'm going to select private, and I'm going to hit save. I'm going to click OK. What it's basically telling me here is that if I have any sharing rules that impact that are impacted, they will be recalculated and it can take some time. I'm going to click OK. You'll notice it tells me that one or more of my sharing rules has been impacted, and I can go down below to view additional details. And as you can see here, you'll notice my account, opportunity, and case sharing rules have been impacted. And it tells me exactly what time this operation was initiated. Now, if I want to go ahead and view the status of how long or the progress of my sharing rule recalculation, I can go into our audit trail. Okay, so you'll see view setup audit trail, and you'll see right away it shows me as of 3:54 p.m. Eastern time, and right now it is 3:44 p.m. I said maybe 54, I meant 44. It shows that the finished organizational-wide defaults update has occurred. So it's done. It's already applied the organizational-wide default. So this is really a handy tool as an administrator to view any adjustments you've made to your organization through the setup menus and see, who's made changes. If you're not the only administrator in this account that has access to this area, they can view, who was the user who made the changes. As you can see here, it was myself. So now what I want to do is I also want to go into our custom profile. So we set up the access to our accounts to private. Now what I want to do is go into our profiles. And I'm going to go back into our custom sales profile. I'm going to click edit. Let me scroll back down to our object level permissions. So remember we left off with giving this only read. Well, on our organizational wide default, we set it to private, which means our record level access, you're only going to be, as all the users across in Salesforce, you're only going to have access to the records you own. So you're not going to be able to see anyone else's records. Now here, what we're defining is what you could do with the records that you have access to. Okay. So because we only will have access to the records we own, what we're defining here is as an account, as a sales user, since I'm only going to see the accounts that I own, what can I do when I view that account? Well, I could read. Maybe I want to be able to create my own accounts. I want to be able to edit my own accounts, and I want to be able to delete my own accounts. So let me go ahead and let me hit save. Okay. Now let's log in as that user to view the changes. So I'm going to log in as our sales user. And let me go to our accounts tab. And if I toggle to our all accounts list view, as you can see, I no longer am able to see all the other records because our organizational wide default was now changed from public read write to private. So now I'm only able to see the accounts that I own. And for this example, I only own one account, which is ABC Organization. Now, because I have access to this account, what I've defined through my profile is that I should be able to read the account. I should be able to edit edit anything on the account that I own. I should be able to create an account and delete. So as you can see here, I have the delete option here where I can go ahead and I can delete this account, which I'm not going to do. I have this edit option here where I can edit an account, all right, and any of the details. And then if I want to go now back into our accounts tab, you'll also notice I have this new button here, which we didn't have before. And if I click new, I'm able to create an account. And that's pretty much the summary of the differences between profiles and organizational wide defaults. So to conclude, your profile will give you access to what permissions you have on that particular object. So what you can do when you access that object, so in this case, the accounts, what I could do in this example was I could read, edit, create, and delete. But because I define on my organizational wide default, which gives me record level access, I only have access to records that I own because I defined it as private through the organizational wide default. So organizational wide default is record only access, while their profile is object level access.